Ladies and gentlemen,
Good evening.
Are you ready?
Okay, here we go.
You're listening to the Deal Room Podcast. Join us as we bring you the inside scoop on business sales and acquisitions. Get across trends in the area and hear the industry's best recount their real-life tips, traps, and experiences. Now, here's your host, Joanna Oakey.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here and welcome back to the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we talk to one of our favourite serial guests, Rod Hore of HHMC Global. In this episode, I talk to Rod all about the hot new trends and how to maximise the value of a recruitment business in 2022. We discuss niche strategies, talent attraction, compliance, and the rising costs that face the recruitment industry. This episode is valuable listening for tips on maximising the value of a recruitment business and planning for exit. So sit back, relax, and here's our discussion with Rod. Rod, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for coming back to the Deal Room Podcast. You are one of my absolute favourite guests, so it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back again, and always plenty of things to talk about. It's a wonderful world of business at the moment. It's a very interesting landscape. It's an unusual landscape. There's two components of the M&A in recruitment that make it unusual. The M&A world is in a very unusual spot right now. And then recruitment obviously also has had some real challenges coming out of the bedlam that has been the last couple of years. And so when you merge them together, it just really is a very unusual space that we're in right now, isn't it? It is. And there is the detail is so interesting. You can say things that are very high level and you say, oh yes, business is going great or something like that, but the detail is actually fascinating. You know, it's a complex world out there at the moment.
It is complex. And I guess this dovetails so well into the survey that you run annually. I love the survey that you guys run, and it brings out so many interesting themes and topics that are relevant to the recruitment industry. Before we start to dig into that, I just want to make sure that we've let our audience know about this fabulous Buy, Grow, Sell Summit that is coming up really soon. And if you're listening to this after the summit, then you'll also be able to access recordings after the event. But it's definitely something not to miss. And Rod, I'm really excited. We've got a really strong lineup talking specifically about the recruitment industry for this concept of buy, grow and sell, and how it impacts the recruitment industry, how recruiting firms can set themselves up, through using acquisitions for growth, how to properly grow and scale, particularly in these difficult times, and then how to really gear themselves up for maximum exit. I'm excited about it. Maybe, I don't know if you have a few words that you want to throw in about this summit that's coming up.
Well, I'm excited about the whole 3-day summit because there's some great speakers and there's some topics that are really relevant to every business owner and every leader in business and professional services. But there are some very specific things that relate to the recruitment industry. So our little 2-hour slot on the second day of the conference, we want to really dig into specific issues for the recruitment industry, and we've got a great lineup of speakers and a big panel session so we can answer your questions. And very, very much looking forward to it. I think it's going to be like a little cherry on the top for those who attend the whole conference that have got an interest in the recruitment industry.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited about it. And, just so exciting seeing some of the speakers that you've got coming along. It's going to be quite the event. But I guess let's then dovetail into your latest survey. Maybe let's start by talking about what the survey is and why you run it on an annual basis.
Okay, so we started, this is the 9th survey we've just released. We do it every 6 months, and so up to year 5, I suppose that means. And we wanted to, the goal was to
try and get some trends about how people were feeling about the industry. So within the recruitment industry, it's difficult to get local information across Australia and New Zealand. So we're asking the same set of questions about how did you go for the last 6 months? What are you expecting to do for the next 6 months? What are the opportunities for you? What are the barriers for you? But then, and we do that every survey, and the data from that is fascinating, especially as you can imagine over the last couple of years where everything just went haywire. But we always have a couple of additions to that. And in this particular survey, we wanted to have what we called our final look back at COVID, because we don't want to talk about it anymore. So we've got, so not only some survey questions, but also a lot of others have contributed data so that we've got a really good view of everything back over the last 2 years. And then we asked people their thoughts and opinions and forecasts for what they thought was going to happen in 2022. And that gave us surprising information, and I think really highlighted some trends that are a little bit different, and maybe showing that what you've got to do in 2022 is not return to normal, but you've actually got to be focusing on some slightly different things to take advantage of the market and to really create the value in your business.
And just out of interest, how is it that keeping this tab on market trends really links into that element of exit that you know obviously very well known for, Rod? How do you what's the linkage with it all?
It's like all good benchmarks is that nobody gets out of bed to be average. Okay, nobody runs a business and devotes all of their time and sweat and energy to be just an average company. And without some measurement and without some understanding of where you sit compared to what's going on in the marketplace, I think people don't have that immediate goal and the drive to be able to say, we need to be better than this. We need to improve this area. We need to improve that area. And the recruitment industry is made up of a lot of small to medium businesses, and a lot of people are running their business for the first time, and they don't necessarily have years and years of experience of running a business. And so anything that we can help people with guidance to show them what they need to do to be excellent and to create value and to be of interest to people who might be looking to acquire in the market, that helps the whole process. So we're hoping that we can make better businesses, which is a very generic term, but we can actually create wealth for business owners by them focusing on the things that are going to make them both attractive and valuable.
It's an interesting point. I've actually finished, here's a hot press announcement, my draft of a book that I've written that's all focused on buying, growing and exiting, actually. How about that? and I wrote the book because I'm constantly amazed at how little understanding business owners have at exit of what actually creates that value at exit. You know, they've got all of their eggs in this business basket generally, without any understanding whatsoever of what creates that, you know, of the wealth creation possibilities within their business and how to maximize it. And I love it when I have discussions with you, Rod, because you're so focused on that message and that understanding. And so many businesses just don't understand, you know, it's just it's an important message, isn't it? It's critical.
Yes. And it's obviously bigger than just creating value, because people think creating value, it's a multiple of profit or something, but that's sort of like the pub talk. I mean, it's a bigger story than that. And so people need to make themselves attractive so that people want to talk to them and want to talk to them about acquiring their business. And they need to create value in the right areas so that people see it as a low risk and positive thing to acquire. And then they need to create value as well, so that there's a decent number there. And so, you know, it's that all around understanding of what is going to be attractive to a potential acquirer, and so that they will come to you and they'll negotiate with you, and it'll be an easy transaction, and they'll want to do it, and they'll pay proper price. And so it's, you know, it's a really, really great conversation, and it gets away from all of the stuff that happens down at the pub. I talk about pub talk a lot, you know, because you've got to dismiss that a little bit and get back to some reality about I suppose the broader and more detailed version of what you need to do in your business.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I just think it's such an important point for businesses that are growing in a particular industry to have very close connection to the people who are the figureheads in in exit in that industry, you know, obviously as you are in recruitment, because the whole point is, you know, you see what makes a good sale. You see where the real, you know, where the real fight is on the acquisition side, what businesses, acquirers really want to be targeting. And it's just, it's knowledge that many business owners just don't even realize they need to tap into early on in the piece to understand how they piece together growth and what growth with exit in mind actually looks like.
Yeah. For example, a lot of people are very surprised when we say it takes 5 years to sell a business, and they go, 5 years, but it's actually 2 years to get ready, because there's always some things that you should do with external review that helps people get themselves most prepared to go to market. And that can be in all sorts of areas. It could be some corporate issues, not just about profit and so on. Obviously, it takes time to do a transaction, and then there's usually some lingering component of the transaction. There might be an earn out or whatever it may be. And so, it's not something to wake up on Monday morning and say, I'm going to sell my business. It's actually something you need to do a little bit of planning for and educate yourself on and go through a process.
And I know we're completely deviating from our topic here, but that's what makes this podcast special. You never know where you're going to go. But it really is that reality, I find, that when people start thinking about exit, they don't think about exit until they're at that point of exit. And then the problem is they have this emotional connection to feel like they need it to happen immediately. And they just can't even think of themselves staying in the business for another 5 years to do it properly. So
we're very happy to say publicly that we talk more people out of selling than we take on as clients, because they quite often come to us and say, I need to sell my business, and it's exactly the wrong reason, or they haven't thought through the issues, or it's actually a poor personal choice for them to not continue to run their business. And so, when you sit down and look at the personal components and the business components together, quite often the best opportunity for people is to actually get a little bit of focus and, continue on with the business for some period, and then maybe have an event further down the track.
All right. Well, look, let's actually then get stuck into the outcome of your recent survey. So maybe let's just start with the hot new topics.
Yeah, look, so we didn't set out to write the report to say, here's a bunch of hot new topics. But when we started analysing the data, we saw that some things had changed a lot. Okay, so it's because we've been running the survey for a couple of years before the pandemic, 2 years during the pandemic, and now we're coming out of it, we're seeing that actually there's some differences, and some questions that we might have asked 3 or 4 years ago are now being answered very differently, or the number of people participating in a particular activity, it's quite different. One of the things I want to start with, though, is that when we were trying to look back on COVID, we asked a question about how has COVID impacted you, the person who's filling the response in the survey. And we asked questions in 3 areas. How has it impacted you personally? How has it impacted you from your professional life? And how has it impacted you from your business? And we expected those 3 answers to be fairly similar. And I was really quite surprised at the variation. And this reminds us that we need to continue to be empathetic leaders, and we need to treat everybody as an individual, and we need to not make generalizations or assume how people are feeling, because a lot of people said, this is the best time I've ever had for my business, but personally it's been horrible. So we asked people to fill it in on a 1 to 10 scale. Yeah. So, people might have been in lockdowns, Melbourne and Sydney, kids at home, just the whole personal issue was actually really came out in the survey more than I expected. So it might be the best time ever for my business, but I'm ranking my personal 2 years as being awful. And the professional one was actually halfway between. So, but there was a difference between how's my business gone and how have I gone personally. So that was actually a real, okay, put that in lights, because we need to just continue to be as nice, if I can use that word, be as nice to people as we have over the last couple of years. This isn't over yet in terms of the impact on people.
Hopefully less homeschooling.
Yeah. So anyway, just I wanted to sort of say that and put that aside, but it was an interesting piece of information that came out. So one of the things that, if I could make a generalisation, and this is a little bit specific to recruitment agencies now, is that those companies that are doing the basics well are going to prosper going forward. And those companies that maybe have been cutting corners because the market's been great, and the market is great and everybody's having a fantastic time and revenues up and profits up and so on. But those companies that are doing well. So that shows itself in a couple of areas. A lot of people are saying that the biggest challenge they've got and the biggest barrier to profit growth now going forward is actually the attraction of new candidates. In other words, there's a staff shortage out there. Well, those companies that have done all of the basics really well and built talent pools and done all the hard work, which is sometimes unrewarded, they are now better placed than those people who've been skidding along the top and just relying on job ads and all those sorts of things. So, you know, it's coming home to roost in terms of how that works. Second thing in that area is that those people who grew their business by just going out and hiring experienced staff off the market, or maybe waiting for some UK people to come over who've got experience or whatever it may have been, they're struggling at the moment because there's a huge staff shortage within the recruitment industry. And so if your business model is based on hiring experienced people, you're going to have a really tough year. So the people who've done the hard work of either of hiring people out of their sectors that they work in, or hiring juniors and training them up, but having that learning and development capacity, and whether it's internal or external, having that learning and development capacity, those people are continuing to grow, and the other people are scrambling to try and catch up with that. So that's sort of all the basics about running a business. You know, how am I going to be sustainable in this area? Where have I got access to the talent, or have I got the talent internal? What are the relationships I've got to be able to do good things within the business? And yeah, it's a great time for a number of companies, but a lot of companies are running into challenges in this particular market.
Fascinating. I love hearing this. It's just so interesting. We see subsets of the industry, and it's just so interesting to see this across the board, you know, type of study of the industry. And we quite often, I think, deal with parts of the industry that are perhaps more organised, more corporatized, and some of these things you're talking about are really feeding into the reasons why that is so critically important. And I know this is a topic that's dear to your heart, Rod, but yes. You know, maybe if you can talk very quickly about what you think has the results have shown in this latest survey that really link in with that, you know, that feeling you have about that importance of, you know, taking your business, looking at it from a more corporate perspective.
Yeah, look, I don't know the numbers in this because it's impossible to get the data, but I always estimate there's about 8,000 recruitment companies in Australia. We don't know. It could be 6,000, it could be 10,000. We're not really sure. But the vast majority of those companies are very small. And so without in any way being demeaning, in some ways they can be put aside in this conversation. We're talking about organisations that have sort of got to the medium size and are growing and have got, you know, leadership structures and management structures and have got some capacity and sustainability about their business. And those companies, a great portion of those companies are doing very, very well at the moment. And the number of companies that I am really enthused about that are having the strategic sort of conversations and having the strategies on the table that they're evaluating in a manner that they probably weren't previously is a very positive thing. So I think it's been a great business lesson over the last couple of years for a lot of organisations. And I think the quality of leadership and the rewards for those organisations that have put the hard work in over the last couple of years is actually really showing. I could put it another way, from an M&A perspective, about 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, the largest companies in Australia were pretty well bought out by Japanese, US, UK companies. And so I was a little bit despondent about whether Australia was going to become a branch office, you know, where we were just going to become a branch office of international companies. Quite the opposite. I'm now really excited about the emerging companies in Australia that are bursting through and really starting to show themselves. They're making great profits. They're making great businesses in terms of staff engagement, in terms of presence in the marketplace, in terms of use of technology, all of those sorts of things. And they're delivering and they're growing. And so it's a very exciting time. And maybe if we didn't have the big shake-up that we've had during COVID, we wouldn't have actually got that.
Isn't that a fascinating outcome? You know, and I'm with you. What an exciting, you know, progression that we're seeing.
And you could actually say 10 or 12 years ago when we had the GFC, the global financial crisis, it actually wasn't felt hard enough in Australia to change anything because it was all over and done with in 1 quarter or 2 quarters, and we're back to where we were. And so no new habits were learnt. We didn't change anything. We just carried on with the way we were before. And that meant that we had basically an unbroken period of 20-something years of growth. And now we've had this massive change where people have had to really reevaluate what they're doing. And the great leaders and have come through, and great companies are being formed.
I love it. I love it. Now, I guess talking about other themes that have come out, I'm interested, you know, where compliance ranked in terms of the focus for organisations in the recruitment sector at the moment.
Yeah, so compliance was probably always put in the category of like governance is, it's something I read about in the paper, but it doesn't apply to me. And within the recruitment industry, that is not the case anymore. The legislation just continues to be more onerous every year. It doesn't go backwards at all. And also the media reporting around it and the awareness of your brand in the marketplace continues to rise. And so wage theft is an example. If you are not so on top of paying your contractors, for example, then your name may appear in headlines in the local papers. And as a company, your reputation is shot. You know, you could lose 20 years of reputation overnight.
And it's such emotive, it's such emotive headlines that are used, like the wage theft, you know, and it generates just such, you know, emotion in the responses. I see a lot of this.
And that's just one element of compliance. I mean, if you're working in healthcare, then you cannot make a mistake. If you're working in, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, everything from labour hire, you know, like a forklift driver, has he got his license? Does he renew his license when it's due? And all of those sorts of things. I mean, the importance of compliance is in every recruitment agency, and it is critical. It is one of the foundation legs now.
Yeah,
that's not something you can give just lip service to.
And when we reflect on compliance from an M&A perspective as well, I think it's so incredibly important to understand any sort of sophisticated acquirer, you know, and if you're looking for a strong multiple in your sale, you know, you want to be attractive to, you know, to a breadth of acquirers, but this concept of how clean you are from these compliance perspectives,
yes,
absolutely critical at the moment. You know, they impact not only on your pool of buyers and how you'll behave and how you'll get through due diligence and, you know, obviously price at the end of the day, whether or not, you know, you'll have a large enough pool of buyers and who they will be, but also on those post-transaction risks that you can take out, you know, the warranties and the indemnities. And the earlier you set up strength in your compliance and governance, you know, the cleaner you will look when it comes to that point of ultimate exit or funding or whatever it is that you're looking for.
You need to have a very, very clear story about all aspects of the business. And that could be, for example, what do you do about long service leave for your temporary and contract workers? You know, do you have a legal position on that? Is it written into your contracts? Is it clearly understood? Is it recorded? You know, what is your position? Because you need to be able to show all of that in due diligence. And that's just one of many. Because if you can't show it and it's uncertain, then the purchaser might say, well, actually, I'm going to take off some money off the price because I need to make an allowance for something that might appear in the future. So, you know, it's not just in the contract, it can actually impact the price as well.
Absolutely. Okay, well, are there any other topics that you feel will real stand out?
One of the things is that, again, a very recruitment industry specific one is that perm recruitment at the moment is actually on fire. I mean, so the number of people being placed into permanent positions has gone through the roof. And so, and perm recruitment is great in terms of cash flow for organisations. So, and usually for profit if they're doing it as well. So recruitment agencies at the moment are cash rich in general, and profitable in general. And the challenge is that that's not necessarily the right business mix that you need to create value and to sell your business in the future. So temp is hard at the moment, but what are you doing as a business owner to really, really focus on temp and contract so that as temp and contract becomes a little bit more even-handed in the marketplace, you're actually building a business in the manner and in the structure and in the style that you want to go forward into the future and to create the maximum value in the future. So Greg Savage actually has a term of being seduced by perm, and I think that's true because everybody loves the immediate hit of making a placement. Seduced by perm. You get seduced by the immediate hit of placing somebody, but you also get seduced by the cash impact. Okay, it's a positive thing. And contract is harder. And as a leader in the organisation, you constantly need to be looking for those more recurring levels of revenue, because that's what's going to add value to the organisation in the future. Very hard to do at the moment.
Love it. It's such important points, isn't it? You know, making sure the decisions that we're making today aren't just about today, but are about the future as well.
Exactly.
You know?
Don't miss the opportunity for perm, but boy, you've got to be actually having a focus and discussing internally and putting specific actions in place to not lose where you want to be in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Find the balance.
Find the balance. I love it. And so are there any other last topics that...
Yeah, look, I always feel like the Christmas grouch when I start talking about cost management and so on, because, you know, it doesn't come naturally to me. I'm not an accountant, but
we all like talking revenue a bit more, don't we?
yeah, show me the profit. But there are some costs which are really out of control at the moment. So one of them, and this came out in the survey we did as well, people are prepared to pay above award rates to get people into their business because there's such a shortage. Oh, I mean, that's a decision that will live with you forever, because you've just corrupted your whole policy and your whole process about staff, and do you need to now pay everybody else more money? And, you know, I mean, it causes problems. People are prepared to pay additional commission structures for staff that are coming into the business. Again, that's really hard to undo once you've done it. And then there's all the other costs. I mean, people are investing quite heavily in technology, but we found out that something like, this is the number off the top of my head, but something like 70% of the people don't do a return on investment on the technology that they get into their business, like at all, full stop. And so all these costs are growing and growing and growing within the organisation. And I don't think there's any awareness of how difficult that's going to be to undo. So people are making very short-term decisions to get through the year.
But can we dig into then what are some alternatives? You know, in a tight labour market, you're reacting by increasing what's on offer from a financial perspective, and I completely hear what you're saying. You're digging yourself this hole for the future. Let's talk about what some alternatives might be, though.
Oh, well, in staffing, outsourcing has grown rapidly over the last 12 to 18 months, and it should have. Australia's been lagging what's been going on in the US and the UK, especially for a decade. And so as somebody who's particularly interested in that area, because I have some relationships in that area, then that's been pleasing to see. And so that's a topic that wasn't even being talked about and considered previously by most recruitment agencies in Australia, and is now a hot topic. So using offshore resources to supplement your key onshore resources, your client-facing resources, it should have been part of the mix a long time ago. I won't say the majority, but an increasing number of people are now considering that, growing what they've got, are really working their way through that. And it's not just recruitment processes, it could be back office, it could be marketing, it could be general administrative support. So all of that is now, it's finally happening. And that's one way of sort of offsetting the cost structures. So you don't need to hire 5 people, you might need to hire 2 people and get some support. There's smarter ways of doing things.
Yeah, I guess looking at the problem from a broader perspective than, just the old tools.
and greater use of technology. And so the best companies are using superb technology, because the technology has really improved a lot, and there are great tools around which are not only helping you with compliance and with productivity and so on, but are actually helping you reach more people, so that the whole so I don't want to lump it into social media, but the whole, reaching out to candidates and so on, all of the tools around that, you've got to find tools that are helpful for you in your particular environment.
Yeah. And I guess as well, with rising costs, potentially rising inflation, we also then need to come full circle and look back at, how often are we reviewing our rates? Are we on pace there in comparison to how our costs are moving as well?
Yeah, and I think the average recruitment agency isn't as good as a legal firm and doesn't actually have a rate review every year. And so, nearly every person who's running a recruitment agency was not in a senior position 30 years ago when we last had inflation in Australia. And so inflation is something that is brand new to nearly everybody. And it's more than the clauses in your contract. It's actually how you treat your staff and how you do your forward budgeting and how you deal with clients and so on. It's going to be a major impact as it takes hold.
Fascinating issues that you've covered off here, Rod. And what a great thing for you to be doing regularly, this sort of temperature check on the market. And then, out of that, finding the elements that recruitment owners should be really focusing on in terms of how they build value and how they deal with some of these issues that really are across the board. Actually, it comes back to one of the things that you were saying right at the beginning about the difference perhaps in the feelings of the owners themselves versus the business, and their being a difference in those two areas. It really does remind you that owning and running businesses can be a bit of a lonely space sometimes. And it's so great to hear that there's a whole heap of other people who are suffering the same sorts of, issues that you're going through, and I like reports on trends from that perspective as well. It reminds us that there's a lot of other people who are working hard to find ways to grow businesses.
Yeah, I think the rise in either leadership groups like, entrepreneurs organisation, all those sorts of things, but also the number of managers and owners who've gone out and got a personal coach, or they've set up an advisory board, or whatever it may be. I think that has risen dramatically over the last 2 years. And that is such a positive thing, because you need to have different conversations at different times, and you need sort of a safe space to have those conversations. And for business owners, that stops it being such a lonely environment, and they can actually sit down and have a conversation about things which are not relevant in the day-to-day running of an organisation.
Absolutely. Look, as I said, I think this survey that you're running is just fabulous. It's so insightful. I love seeing the results. How do our listeners get a copy if they want to see the results? Because I think it's something you actually publish and have available to our listeners.
Yeah, it is available for free. There's a link directly on the top of our webpage, hhmc.com.au, and I'll provide the link to you so you can put it in the show notes.
Brilliant, we will. And we'll also put a link right through to you, Rod, so that any of our listeners in the recruitment space can reach out to you if they want to talk further about some of the things that we're talking about today. And just a reminder, of course, we're going to dig into some of these really relevant topics about what to think about as you're growing a recruitment business. So we'll definitely put in the show notes a link as well so that you can register for that event. And once again, if you've missed it, you will still be able to access for a short period of time some recordings, but it's far better to be on there live. We've got a live panel going that Rod is hosting, talking specifically about some of these issues that are going on in the recruitment sector at the moment. We've got some great speakers, and it'll just be, there'll be opportunities for you to ask questions and get questions answered as well. So I'm super looking forward to that. We'll have links in the show notes for that. Rod, can I just say, huge thank you for coming on to the show again. I always enjoy our discussions together and always learn a lot.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the Buy, Grow, Sell Summit in just a short amount of time, and look forward to seeing everybody at that.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed our podcast episode today with the fabulous Rod Hore, all about the hot new trends and how to maximize the value of a recruitment business in 2022. Just a recap of this episode. Of course, in the episode, we took a look at HHMC Global's survey report and its relevance to your exit, what the survey tells about recent trends in the industry, how to offset the current cost structure, and how to effectively create value at exit, which, ladies and gentlemen, is, of course, such an important topic that we cover again and again here on the Deal Room podcast, and is so important for those of you who are building for an ultimate sale. Now, if you're interested in talking to Rod Hore, then just click the show notes or head over to our website, www.thedealroompodcast.com, as we link straight through to Rod at HHMC Global. And of course, at that website, you will also find a booking for the free 15-minute discussion with our legal team if you would like to discuss any aspects of sales or acquisitions of businesses, shares, or assets. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please subscribe to the Deal Room podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player to get notifications straight to your phone whenever a new episode is out. We'd also love to hear your feedback, so please leave us a review and rating if you're already one of our subscribers, or even if you're listening to this podcast for the very first time. Well, thanks again for listening in. This has been Joanna Oakey and the Deal Room podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time.
Aspect Legal has a number of great services that help businesses prepare for a sale or acquisition, to help them prepare in advance and to get transaction ready. We've also got a range of services to help guide businesses through the sale and acquisitions process. We work with clients both big and small and have different types of services depending on size and complexity. We provide a free consultation to discuss your proposed sale or acquisition. So see our show notes on how to book a time to speak with us, or head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment. Thanks for listening to the Deal Room podcast. To find out more about this episode and other episodes in the series, check out the show notes or head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com.au.